First, yes, thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to Denver Startup Week. I'm honored to be here out of a few hundred presenters. It's really an honor to be giving this to you guys. And thank you for sitting here in a seminar that I'd say most people probably wouldn't want to sit into. Recruiting, HR, it's not the most glamorous seminar to be sitting in, but you're standing here potentially for your own future clients or your future employees, so thank you. I want to give you a little bit about me so you get where I'm coming from, my history. So you might have read online a little bit. For the last 12 years, I took a year off, but for about 12 years, I'm from the Silicon Valley, and I became a high-tech recruiter. And what that means, I actually go inside organizations. I work one-on-one with their exec team, with the hiring managers. And so what I did is I worked for companies like LinkedIn, GoPro, Medallia, AMD, and I actually started with them as startups. Even though LinkedIn was about 600 people, they were still a startup. And so when I entered their organization, they might be similar to where you guys are. Maybe they're larger, but they needed to look internally and find out how they were going to retain their employees, not just how they were going to fill seats. Because there's a difference between recruiting and actually retaining. So that's what we want to talk about today is how do we retain the people that you have before they're a button seat, before they actually sign that offer letter? Because it's totally possible and doable, and I've been doing it for 12 years. And it's just a different story. So that's why I'm here to give this to you guys today, to have that possibility. So I've gone through a lot of ups and downs with those organizations. We've made major mistakes. And that's why I'm here for you guys, to help you not do those mistakes. So that you can build your organizations healthy and strong and prosperous for the future. And just take whatever learnings you learned today and bring back and really note what is going on in your organization. So the first question I actually want to ask you guys is, how many of you guys have been a candidate interviewing for a job potentially and you've had a really good experience? Raise your hand. Like raise them up, let's get active. Okay, so a lot of you. Wow, some of you had no good experiences. Okay, that's interesting. How many of you have had really bad experiences? Like they didn't get you, bad process, something. Okay, got it. Actually, it's about 50-50 of the room. So what I'm actually here to tell you today, you have a 50-50 shot at getting hiring and retention right. So it's a 50-50 shot. And we walked into LinkedIn, I walked into GoPro. They literally were rolling the dice because there was no process, there was no way of looking at their culture. There was no connection between their actual hiring culture. They hadn't created it. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about the foundation of your hiring culture and what that means and where that starts. So the first question I want to ask you all, because I need to understand who you are all, as well as there's people outside who aren't in this room who I can't see. So the first question is going to be, I want to know what you want to get out of today. So I need to learn a little bit about why did you come to this? What is it that you want to learn? When you hear hiring and retention, what do you want to know? Don't make it long paragraphs, make it a couple words, maybe make it a sentence, text it on email. It's coming up at some point. But my goal here is for us. I have a methodology it's called from me to we, right? And we have an organization where you have a bunch of me's. There's a bunch of people on their me journeys, on their own hamster wheel. And if we don't engage with the we, if we don't engage with our journey as a whole, then it's not as powerful. So, okay, employee benefits. Where do I start? I like that one. Create a better work environment. Career opportunities, developing a hiring culture, awesome. How to align with organizational culture. Change an old school culture. I like that one a lot, actually. How to juggle cultural fit with technical expertise. That's awesome. That's actually really great. Hire quality staff. Got it? Let's see. Avoid bad hires. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about today. We'll just take this little snippet right here. It's how to avoid bad hires. I have a really nice, good secret sauce, but it's not always a fail-proof, solution to it. But what we're going to do today essentially is, and I know you guys can't read all of this, but there's some really great connections here. Because throughout the clients that I work with and I have worked with, it's pretty much the same across the board. Everyone wants to know how to retain and hire the right people for a culture fit, or how to avoid the bad hires, or how to hire the right person for our team. Like, what does that look like? How do you hire that? So this question for me is for you guys, actually. So you guys get that you're all on this, in the same boat. No one's different. Everyone, it doesn't really matter if you have a large organization or small. The foundation of recruitment is the same. So you all are probably having a lot of the same problems. So thank you for that. So another aspect I want to find out about the room, how many, we're going to go into years, and I'm not trying to date anyone here in terms of years on this planet, but how many people, just raise your hand, have been in the corporate world for over 20 years? Interviewing, hiring, whatever it might be. 10 to 19-ish? Okay, 5 to 10-ish, and then sub 5. Get your hand up. So it's a pretty good spread. One thing that I will say is that what I've come to find when I go into organizations that have people that have been around for a long time, there's a lot of great experience to be had. But what happens is, and there's a shift in the culture right now of hiring, is how do you look at the foundation and take from what you've experienced over those years? And so what I'll ask of the people that have been around for many years and have seen it, to be patient with me today, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually speak to the entire audience. We're going to speak to everyone, even those with 1 year of experience, 2 years of experience. So, because really what we're doing is we're creating this foundation. But yet the people that have been around, look for yourself what's in your organization. What can be taken from today? What can you look at internally to create that hiring culture that's empowering and for retention? So the typical scenario when I walk into my clients, the last 12 years has been, we have pain. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys identify with that. It's like, we have to hire. I have pain. I really don't want to have to hire. I just want this person to show up on my doorstep. I wish I didn't have to make an effort, put the money in, right? It's just pain. So it's kind of like when you're building a house. And you're building a house and you create the blueprints. And you're like, got the blueprints. And if the next step that you did was you actually bought the furniture and started bringing it to the house, that doesn't make any sense. You haven't actually built the foundation. You haven't taken the blueprint, which is, for instance, who you want to hire. What's the concept? Who is the person you want to hire? And actually built the foundation and then built the house and then put the furniture inside. So essentially, most organizations go, I have pain, I want to see resumes. And there's all of this. Do you guys identify with that? Yeah? Okay. I've seen it, and you guys are all normal. It's totally normal. And it's something that I stand for in helping this organization and this world create a shift in how they see hiring and retention, because it doesn't start with the signing of an offer. So we're going to create that foundation today for you guys to take back to your organizations. So is everyone on board? Everyone getting all this? Awesome. So a couple other questions. I want to get an idea of, I've gotten how long you've been in the market, but I want to know, for instance, how many employees all of you have. Some of you have none. Some of you have. Some of you aren't employees. So start voting, and we'll see what the dynamic here is. I mean, it is Denver Startup Week, so that makes sense. I like this voting thing. This is great, actually. Do you guys like it so you can see what's going on in the room? Yeah. Thanks to Christina, my trusted advisor. So, yeah. I mean, it's pretty, yeah, okay. We are at Denver Startup Week. Pretty typical. I actually figured this would be the case, where we have a lot of people who are just starting out their organizations. Like I myself am just one right now. I have partners that I work with, like Dave, like Integral Performance and whatnot, where we come together and we build strong foundations of organizations overall. But for the most part, you guys are about 50% true startup mode. I mean, 0 to 10 employees. And most of you, I'd venture to say, are probably not recruiters and probably not HR. Is that right? Yeah, okay. So that's why I'm here for you. It's because when you start up your own organization, and even though I walked into LinkedIn and there were 600 people, or GoPro, there were 250, the majority, if none of them, were HR and recruiting. And so everyone who's not that is trying to do that, and they're not getting it. And so there's a waste of time, there's a waste of money, and they're not hiring the people that they want, and there's a high turnover. So this is a pretty good dynamic. The next question is, what industry are you in? I'm not going to give you multiple choice because there's way too many industries. Just type in your industry for me. I like the A. I don't know who's A, but I like A. That's a new industry. We'll talk later for sure. That'll be a challenge, Dave. We got to talk to them about recruiting in industry A. I like that.
There's two of them.
Oh, there's two A's. There's some competition. Yeah. Awesome. Got it. Yeah. Wow. So you guys are pretty diverse. I mean, medical, publishing, real estate, retail, tech, staffing, software, a couple staffing, user experience, sales outsourcing, IT, and a couple of A's. So, the A's are interesting. But, marketing, software, biz. So I put this up there because it's interesting. After 12 years of direct recruiting, taking a step out of that and standing for actually companies building their foundation to get it right so when they do recruit, they have that retention, they have that hiring culture. So when I took a step out of direct recruiting and I'm talking to some clients and they're hearing what I do, and they go, oh, you don't know my industry, you couldn't help me. And I'm like, well, is the foundation of the house the same? Like, it's the same, right? All industries, you all have to hire people. Who's the hottest commodity? Is people. What do you have to do to retain them? The same thing. Now, if you want to stock refrigerators, if you want to get foosball tables, that's after the fact. But it does not matter what industry you are in, this philosophy will help all of you. And I guarantee it because I've worked in vast different industries, and it helps all of them because it's the core of who you are. And that's what you get into, is the core of who you are. So pretty awesome. So thanks for sharing that. So the last aspect is, and I will just assert this, I'm not going to ask you this, is there's three major areas of an organization that are the most powerful: process, product, people. Have you guys heard that? Kind of that trilogy, right? Process, okay, great. But you really have the product and the people, which are the most important. But without people, your product goes nowhere. So the most valuable asset to any organization is actually your people. So how do you get that right? How do you actually retain them and hire them and retain them before they sign that offer? You're actually doing that prior to offer. So let's talk a little bit more about that in terms of the next area as well. So what we're going to be talking about is who owns hiring and retention, and where does retention start? So this is a great question and not putting any negativity on this room at all, but most get it wrong, which is totally okay. So who owns, I'm actually not going to give you this answer. Who owns recruiting and retention? Forever. I mean, everybody, right? But from the get-go, from the first employee that you are, through if you're 50,000, 100,000 plus employees, who owns it? The accounting team?
The founding team.
The founding team, right? The leaders, right? So you pop up that question. One more, next question. Get on your phones. Okay, well, so the question, where in the hiring process does retention start? So I'll give you the answer of the question before, but answer this one first. Where in the hiring process does retention start? Wow, it's a battle between C and D, a battle. Come on, A and B, come on. Nothing, huh? No one loves A and B. All right, we pretty much have our agreement. And typical answer when I ask people, where does retention start? The typical answer is, well, when I'm interviewing them or they sign the offer and they're coming on board. And actually, as my friend here in the front said, leadership is actually who owns hiring and retention forever, literally forever. And the moment that you have the concept that you are hiring, the concept of, I think we need we might need to hire that's the concept of retention. Because if you stand in the place of, we just need to hire because I have pain, and you forget to build that foundation, they will turn over. I guarantee it, and sooner than you want them to. So anyone, and not wronging anyone here, because this is the most normal answer I always get is during the interview process. I totally get that. Because you're there, you're right with them, you're interacting with them, and that's your power. That's the way in which you can actually help retain them. But where it actually starts is in leadership. And I would assert that pretty much every one of you sitting in here are a leader in some way, shape, or form. Does that sound about right? Some form of leadership. So when you consider hiring, that's when retention starts. So I have a story about Jeff Weiner, who's the CEO of LinkedIn, or at least was, once they got bought off for billions. But I was working with him and David Henke, who's Senior VP of Operations, and we had this big initiative going on. And for about a month, Jeff Weiner stepped out of the limelight and went and took on another initiative. And things started to crumble. And the recruiters, we started noticing that the teams became detached. And people weren't connected to each other. They weren't in contact. Time was being wasted because he wasn't there. Not just his presence, but he hadn't created the hiring culture. He hadn't created what does that look like. So that's what we're really going to get into today. So I know it's kind of just the beginning of what we're talking about. But I really want you guys to understand that no matter where you are in the process, and it's totally normal if you step away during the process sometimes, but just come right back. Come back and stand there for your people and stand there for retention. Leadership as well, in terms of leadership creation and growth, is a really important aspect. And I work with an organization called Integral Performance, and Dirk is in the audience, if Dirk can stand up for one moment. Dirk Dixon and I, and Jerry Dackerman, who they're my arm of leadership transformation in regards to neuroscience. It's actually quite fascinating. And so when we work with organizations, and it's kind of like I'm a chiropractor, I come in and I adjust you guys, I don't really reform you guys. But Jerry and Dirk come in and we really work on leadership so that you build your strong foundation as a leader, and you can build your strong hiring foundation, so therefore both coincide. So if anyone is interested in leadership transformation or insights into leadership and how you can inspire versus telling, Dirk will be here after and you can talk to him as well. But powerful partner as well. So last little story about turnover is, I don't know if you guys know, but it's at a minimum when an employee turns over, let's say it's an $80,000 employee, you're looking at about $16,000 to replace that person. So at a mid-level retention rate, mid-level turnover rate, you're looking at 20% of someone's base salary. So times out however many people walk out your door, and times that also by how much you had to recruit for them, and you're looking at astronomical numbers walking out your door. So we don't want that to happen. So let's now build the foundation. So next one. So there are 4 key areas to building this foundation. And I asked a question prior. Most of you are not most of you are not HR, most of you are not recruiters, right? And most of you nodded your heads, great. So you are not the expert. I would assert that I'm probably the expert in this role, standing in this room. So what has to happen is when you actually take on that recruiting role, you have to become a recruiter. It's kind of like saying, hey engineer, I need you to go out and sell, but just go sell. You're really good at writing code, but I need you to sell. And you don't help that engineer learn how to sell. Does that make sense? But yet organizations all the time ask their hiring teams to recruit and give them no expertise. They give them no power. They give them no information. They just go, we're connected on culture, right? You know what I'm looking for, right? Okay, great, go interview. And that's why I had you guys raise your hand before, because I'm sure some of you raised your hand and said, they asked me all the same question. I've been in that interview where every one of the people in that room asked me the exact same question because they're not in communication. Because what a recruiter actually does is they assess the needs of an organization. So as you're a leader and as you're assessing that, you have to put on the recruiter hat as well and assess what it is that the organization needs and why. You need to be asking why and challenging that as well. So many organizations that I work with don't really want to put on the recruiter hat, and I get that, but if you're going to hire, you're going to have to. So keep it on the wall, keep it somewhere you don't see it, because it's not really the most shiny hat all the time. But know that when you engage in the process of recruitment, you have to pull that off, and you really have to be able to engage with the process of recruiting. And it can be really fun. We're not going to get into how fun it is, at least for me, today. But there's ways in which to engage with candidates and the whole process. It just makes it fun. I've transformed organizations where they're walking out going, this is great. Like, I've never had so much fun talking to candidates in my life. So there is a way to engage as a recruiter to discover what actually needs to be gotten, the why, and to put on that hat when you actually are recruiting. So the next aspect, which is the really important aspect, is, let's see. Delay, anyone sing? Well, I'm wondering what it is. So I want to know what you guys think. What does a recruiter, so that I don't leave you lingering, what are the roles of a recruiter, so we get really clear about what that hat's going to look like? What are the job functions of a recruiter? One word. I like that, ambassador, a lot. Whoever wrote Pendulum, I like that. Okay. So are you seeing all the different aspects that a recruiter is? And this is really not everything, because being the non-experts, it's hard for you to know what actually is involved in recruitment. So for you guys in the back that can't see some, there's communicate, there's two communications. There's dream, there's engage, there's hires, there's hunt, interview, assess, character, marketing, network, ambassador. I know, I saw that one too. I get that. Recruit, fit identity, source. So it's a pretty good, you guys did pretty well actually on the overall aspects of what it means to be a recruiter. Now this is why it's so heavy for organizations, because organizations don't want to have to do all this when this is not your actual 100% role. But you have to put this hat on. You have to be, like, whoever wrote ambassador was great, because it doesn't always have to be that when you put that hat on, I have to recruit or I have to go hunt or whatnot. You might be in that moment an ambassador. You might be in that moment a communicator. Sometimes I call us babysitters, because we have to be babysitters. We have to shuffle people from place to place. So know that with the job that you have as a leader, you also have to have this hat on. Most organizations don't want to actually see this, so they bypass the step of engaging with, especially with small organizations, you're 1 to 10 people. You have to be a recruiter. You have to be your own recruiter. Or you can spend money and get outside agencies or other types. But if you're doing it on your own, embrace being a recruiter. You may not love it, but embrace it. So yeah. So you guys get that? Okay. So the next aspect, which I kind of call my trilogy, is a very simple way of going about, it's the way I see it is, this is truly the foundation and the lens by which you need to see every hire, every way, whenever you choose to recruit, this is the trifecta that you need to see through. So the first one is culture. Now, most organizations are like, yeah, I got it. I got my culture. My people know. We're awesome. You know, we communicate sometimes. Tony Say, I mean, you know who that is from Zappos, right? We've probably heard a lot about Tony and how he talks about culture. But he didn't just talk about it. And this is the difference. And LinkedIn, GoPro, back-to-back organizations that I worked with had to do a full-blown culture shift because they were not in communication. And this is the key to this. The key to the entire thing is communication. But Tony Say, not just, you've probably heard that he puts it on the walls and everyone has to be on board. He gets people, gets the entire organization in a room. And what happens when that happens is that people are actually in communication. Because when you have an idea, or you say, my culture is this, and you keep it at you, or you plaster it on the wall, one, there's up for interpretation, there's up for assumption. If you're not in true communication with the people that are in your organizations, you have not created culture. And a lot of leadership do that, is they'll create the culture, and they'll think that they're communicating it, but they're not. So the first aspect is you really, really, really need to define it. Like, be very, very finite, but don't just define it on your own. Define it with the other leadership that are involved. And when you define it, keep defining it. Keep engaging with the people that you're hiring and keep defining that. And make sure that that's something that everyone gets. Now, what's happened is I've decided to, we did a big initiative at LinkedIn, and we got all the leadership in the room. So it was a pretty big room. And we actually threw out, what does culture at LinkedIn mean to you? Hundreds and thousands of words came out, and they all didn't match. But that's because we're 100 people looking at the same red apple in different ways. And so when you're looking at your culture, truly define it. Because if you can't define your own culture and your people can't define your own culture, you can't hire. No one's going to come to you. And the companies that I've watched that have transformed their culture have actually become what I call employers of choice. You will not have to pull organizations to you. They will come to you naturally. So that's a big difference there as well. You have a question?
I don't know if you have like a presentation and then QA, or we can jump in.
Oh, at the end, if you want to ask.
Okay. So culture is kind of, you hear a lot about like culture, but it seems like very vague to me. So like, when you brought everyone in, is it like, okay, there's like core values, and it's like integrity would be like the bullshit answer, and then like,
for
like,
your
what,
company.
But like, what is that?
Not for my company. Just kidding.
But like integrity can mean like so many things, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
So like, what
That's
is
a great
an
point.
example of
That's a great
defining
point.
culture?
So I'm really actually happy you brought that up. So we're going to pull up a little slide of what it looks like, what you need to ask yourself. But you brought up a great point. And this was actually going to ring true through the whole entire process is when you say integrity, and let's say you're the CEO, I'm the CTO, whatever it might be, and you say integrity and I say integrity, we obviously mean different things. We need to get on the same page. Either we decide not to work together because we don't have the same kind of integrity values, but when you come together and you have listed out, say, who are we to our core? What's our personality like? What are our characteristics? What's our communication styles? What are our traditions? You map out what it is that you want to identify. What are our behaviors? What are our values? What are our styles? You get together and you just keep digging. What does that look like? What does integrity mean to you? Why?
Give an example of like at very detailed.
Like communication, right? Let's say communication. We can just role play this.
Cool.
Communication. What does communication mean to you?
Overly communicating, as in if you've done something, let the other person know. I mean, it's hard to describe. Right?
Okay, and in which way, so you feel, to hear you, communicating is overly communicating to someone so they get it.
Right.
How do you do that? What does that look like?
So, I mean, like, I can list examples, which is kind of the easiest way for me. Like, someone did a certain project that I might not know about. They should send us a message saying, hey, just let you know, I tackled this.
Got it. So what you are asking for in your communication is they are proactive,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, got it?
Right, so proactive would be the value.
Right. But for instance, if you have someone that you're partnering with as leadership, you might expect them to be proactive with you. Mm-hmm. You need to ask them, what does communication mean to you? They might say, I don't want to be proactive. Like, I don't want to be proactive. I want it to just be a back and forth. So that's the hash out. It's like, what does that look like for you? So in that proactivity, what do you want that email to look like? Wow, you're a really nitpicky guy. I mean, like, you want way too much, or your leadership might be like, I don't need all that information. Yeah. So when you take something, you just keep digging deep. What does that look like for you? Why do you want that? How does that take shape? How do those emails take shape? What does that communication look like? Do we get on the phone? Do we text it out?
So do you write all these things down?
You write it all.
Right.
I would just take a long piece of paper or papers and just have one aspect and just hash it out. And just ask them, what does it mean to you? And you just get up on a board. And we're going to do a little exercise as well when it comes to the last part of this trilogy. You do the exact same thing. So in life, it's pretty normal that way. Thank you. Did you guys all get that example about how that works? And we are assuming, expecting machines. That's just what we do in life. And it's pretty crazy and it's pretty awesome, but we get ourselves in trouble sometimes, and just in work and relationships, because we expect people to get what we get, and we just, because we have them around us, we want them to get it. But I challenge you to really ask why, because when you and your leadership can really get what traditions, I mean, I guarantee you, if I said communication to all of you, you'd have a different example, you'd have a different story, you'd have a different definition. You have to be clear for your own culture, no one else's culture. Don't battle against other cultures, Netflix, etc. Become your own employer of choice. Like, I dare you to become your own employer of choice. And when you think you're done asking why and what that looks like, table it and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And when you are interviewing people, make sure that you are articulating what that looks like to you. I've found that a lot of employers, because they have pain, are nervous to say, I don't think we can give you the right opportunity for you, to a candidate that's perfect for them. I mean, imagine having the exact right person. You're the man or you're the woman. But yet you don't fit our culture. You're not going to give me that feedback. You're not going to articulate yourself that way. Most organizations won't step back and say, I don't know if we can offer the person the opportunity that they want. So stand strong in that. Be strong in your own culture and really define that and get very clear about that. So, clear objectives. Defining a culture gives you clear objectives. Talent wants to build a career with you, not just get a job. There are a ton of people out there that just want jobs, and that's my job and Dave's job and Hannah's job to siphon those people out. You don't want someone that just wants a job. That's not retention. You want someone who comes to you that you do not have to pull. And the first way is you defining your culture. Because if they don't like it, it's like dating. It's the same thing as dating. If you go out and you don't know who you are to your core, and you're like, yeah, you all look great. I'm going to date like 5 of you. I don't know who I am, but I'm going to date you all. This is going to be great. It's going to be a mess. Because you don't know who you are to the core. You don't know if you value integrity or honesty or open communication. Get who you are so you don't have to pull so hard. Get who you are. So they are going to want to build a career with you. And I know I keep dropping the names, but it was the biggest, the two biggest organizations. Medallia did it too, but they just did this shift. Again, it wasn't a full-blown reorg. It was just a shift in the way in which they see culture, which they defined culture. And the way in which to do it is get into communication. Don't assume. Don't assume that everyone gets it. So, and it's very powerful just to be in communication with others. So the question that I will have for you, what is the impact, now that you've heard about kind of a great example, what is the impact of not defining culture? What is the impact on the organization? You can pick anywhere. I mean, there's many ways to think that there could be impact on an organization. What is the impact to an organization if you don't define your culture? Through hiring, through not hiring, through bottom line, wherever you might think that might be. What is the impact to you and your organization for not defining that? Chaos. That's perfect. Discontent, negativity. That's a good one. People don't understand what is expected and gets frustrated. Yeah, because nothing's clear. Apathy, turnover, failure, instability, mixed messages to employees, disarray, confusion, all very positive outcomes, right? Super positive. No, really. But lack of accountability, destruction, disarray. I mean, we're really going deep here now. I mean, we're really getting in there. Destruction, low morale, lack of accountability, disengagement, hesitation, festering mistrust. I haven't seen one positive. So, and it's not a negative to anyone that hasn't really gone that deep. Just do it. Just do it. It's just about being in that place of I stand for my culture. And I stand for my organization to truly bond. And I stand for, even though you might not be a big communicator, you got to get it. Go talk to Dirk or something. Go get leadership on. Go get your leadership hat on. Because the greatest leaders that I know are the ones that actually communicate through words and through interactions, not the ones that just mandate by putting it on the wall. That's not a transformation shift. So yeah, no revenue growth. I was actually going to mention that, and I'm happy someone did. Your bottom line, your money maker is not making money because your culture is not sound. Ambiguity, lack of clarity, misunderstanding, stagnation. Yeah, loss of institutional knowledge, and that's a whole other aspect. That's great. When you lose people, you lose knowledge. So if someone is on board for a year or 2 years or whatnot, and they leave because you didn't create your foundation, not only are you losing money, put that aside. All that knowledge that they've gained about your organization is gone, literally gone. Now you have to start with someone who's like a baby bird, and you got to bring them up through, through the ranks to actually figure out who your organization is. Or you can start from the beginning and retain them up front from the concept. So yeah, employees don't trust. I mean, that's like a cancer throughout the whole organization. If people are coming into the same situation, thinking different things and expecting different things, people aren't going to trust each other because they're going to see, for instance, someone not being proactive on an email, or they're communicating in a different way. They're like, I don't like that. But if you establish it up front and you're like, listen, this is the way we communicate. We're very open in communication. We advocate for you to have a voice. We actually don't hire people who want to sit in the corner and just be and just do. So if that's you, honor that, but that's not who we hire. What do you think? Imagine if an employer asked you that, or they said that to you. You'd probably go, oh, that's probably not me. I'm not going to choose that employer because that's not powerful for me. So yeah, this is a great one. If you don't define your culture, someone will define it for you. Like, that is great. I don't know who wrote that. Raise your hand. Awesome. I love that. They will define it for you. And then the culture that you've tried to create, that you've created out of your own vision, has nothing to do with you. And that's scary, right? So your culture is taking off without you while you're standing by, not connecting. So just be a connector. Stand for being a connection. So the next step, which is this is always a slippery slope with my clients. And they don't really want to do this, but and this is the point where definition of culture takes time. Then you have the next step of defining your skill set. Okay, so we've identified leadership is the owner, right? Leadership owns the concept of an opening. Great. What do you do with that? How do you define a position? Defining a position starts with that leadership. You say, the first question is always, why am I hiring? If you don't know why you're hiring, just like, I'm flustered, I don't know what I'm doing, might want to take a step back and actually look at what are the functions in front of me that I'm unable to do that are not creating power within my organization. Step back and ask yourself why, and then ask yourself why again 5 times. What will this person bring to the organization and bring to my life that will free me up to do my job, but then will also empower the organization? So ask yourself why. So this is a great example. So there's 2 areas, and this is something that organizations get wrong often. 1, because they're not in communication, and 2, because they just don't do it. So Paul, he's the VP of product at GoPro, and they launched me into GoPro with no help. I asked, any guidance. They said, no, just go recruit for them. So I did, and it was pretty par for the course for my experience. And so I went in and I said, hey, Paul, I said, you have these 22 positions you need me to hire in a year, which is awesome because I have 4 other groups that have the same amount. So this is going to be a great year. Talk me through your hiring team. And he goes, yeah, they're great. There's like 4 or 5 of them and awesome. I said, great. You have a job description? He goes, I do. I said, great. Have you talked to them about what you want? He goes, well, we've kind of talked about it. And I knew right there's no way there's communication had happened. I said, no, really, have you really gotten into a room, slapped that job description in the middle of the room and said, this is what I want. Now I'm going to be quiet, and what do you want? Same red apple, 5 people. What do you see? What do you want? And it's interesting because he goes, we can't waste our time on that. I said, I'd much rather waste my time on an hour of getting clear now than, I make a lot of money off you turning over. This is awesome, but I don't want to. This is not my goal. The reason I got into recruiting is because I love helping people with their journeys. That's why I'm in recruiting. So I said, I'll bet you dinner, and you bet me dinner. If I'm right, I'll buy, if you buy me dinner, and vice versa. I guarantee, he goes, this is going to be like a 5-minute conversation. They got this. Like, we got culture. We've all talked about it. They know what I'm looking for. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. I'm excited. This is going to be great dinner. So we went into the room, and I swear to you, an hour later, we walked out. And he was like this. He's like walking out, and I go, what's going on, Paul? And he goes, you're right. I said, I know, but that's why I'm here for you. And he goes, I had no idea we were that disconnected. I said, most organizations don't. Because when you have pain, you just want it to go away. And going away in recruiting is, give me resumes, hurry up and give me resumes. And it's a fact, and I totally get that. But there are like 2 or 3 of us in the Bay Area that stood for this. I literally would stand in front of him and say, I'm not giving you resumes. 1, I'm not ruining my name because I stand for you getting this, but you guys got to get this. So we hashed out in that room what the must-haves of a position are. What must this person do to be successful and empower the organization? Now let's talk to the nice-to-have, kind of the more fluffy things, right? These get muddied all the time, all the time. And so when you actually get your hiring team in the room and you hash out must-haves and nice-to-haves, you get a lot of debate, a ton of debate. But what actually happens there is when you walk out of the room, you're all in agreement of what that job description, what that function is, what the must-haves and what the nice-to-haves are. Or there's people that are not in agreement, but they have to be in agreement. Or they're not on the hiring team. That's another suggestion too, is you might have people on the hiring team that don't really want to be there. And not everyone really wants to be there. But if they're not invested in your culture, you might want to, if they don't want to be in your hiring team, you want to think about if they're really invested in your culture. I've seen that happen as well. So what also happens with the must-haves and nice-to-have, one more point, is the fact that when you're standing in clarity, when the entire recruiting team gets it, and you have diverse people, and we all raised our hand as to most likely, I had an interview that everyone asked me the same questions, and some of us would have that. Well, what happens with that is you don't get any information. You got all the same information. So once you've gotten into the room, you've talked to each other, you've gotten clarity, then you can say, oh, here are the pieces of our puzzle. Here you, Bob, you're going to talk about this. Here you, Jim, you're going to talk about this. Here, Sarah, you're going to talk about this. And you're going to delegate out to your hiring team what they need to focus on. Because if you're not talking about who's focusing on what, you're not getting your holistic information. Does that make sense? So in the process of getting clear and sitting down and being in communication, you come up with your agreed upon desire. Then you take that description and you delegate out so that you can empower others to find out the information. So when you walk out of that interview, everyone's coming to the table going, yeah, I got it. I was supposed to ask this. What did you ask? I asked this. So the puzzle starts to come together and it's clear. And retention, that's huge retention. So I can't enforce more, I can't stress more how much communication, I don't know if you've heard me say the word probably 1,000 times in this talk, but most organizations fail because they don't get into communication. They're scared to, they don't want to take the time to. It's always this time thing. But what they don't get is that later on they're going to have to backfill them anyway. So take the time to communicate, really take the time. So it's interesting because this is my favorite part of the whole aspect because now it's time for me to tell you it has nothing to do with you and your organization at all. Like zero at this point. Because really, all it has to do with this person is sitting across from you. And I tell every one of my clients, if this person walks in that door and you're not honored that you have this human being walking in that door, you should be. Because they're taking time out of their lives. They have desires, wishes, motivations, whatever they are. They're taking time out for you, and you are lucky that they're sitting there. And you're lucky that they're giving you the opportunity to hire them into your family. So this is probably my favorite part of the whole equation is if you define culture, if you define what you want, you're strong in you. Now you got to step out of yourself and get into other. And that's where the whole magic happens. That's where the trilogy really happens, where I've watched organizations. Now I'll say this, back up 1 second. I moved to Denver because you guys stand, I call it getting out of me into we. That makes sense to you guys? You know, you're on your me hamster wheel, and you got to jump on that we train. You got to get on that. I jumped on it by moving here because you guys are all about we. It's actually pretty outstanding how incredible you guys are. So thank you for having me in Denver, by the way. But the motivation of other is what actually bonds us in the world. It's actually what bonds us in life. But yet most organizations won't go deep enough, like with this conversation, of what do you mean by that? So for instance, I'll give you an example. At my last organization, Medallia, there was a director of engineering. And we were interviewing a candidate, and to set the stage, we wanted, everyone know what an architect is in engineering, like the highest level individual contributor engineer, right? So they wanted an architect, so I found him an architect. This guy had 8 years of individual contributor engineering experience. Then he got 3 management roles. And now he's interviewing with us for the architect role. I got it, but I didn't want to tell him that. So I interviewed him, and so did the director of engineering. So he comes out, and we've been doing a lot of this work and getting into other, and what do you do? And so I figured he's trained up. And he comes out of the room and he goes, I said, thumbs up, thumbs down. He goes, thumbs down. I said, thumbs down? Why thumbs down? He's perfect. He goes, now when I asked him what he meant, why he's looking at this job, he said it's his sweet spot. And I go, yeah, I know. And he goes, yeah, I don't like it. I said, well, why don't you like it? Well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, he meant this. I said, oh, great. When you asked him what he meant by that, what did he say? He goes, well, he meant, I said, no, David. When you asked him what sweet spot meant to him, how did he define that? And of course, we've been doing a bunch of work, and he goes, Alana, I didn't ask him. I didn't ask him what it meant to him, and I get it, and I screwed up. I said, totally okay. We identify that. I'll tell you, that guy never forgot. We ended up hiring that guy because he was perfect. Because for 8 years, he was an engineer, became a manager, and went, I'm not a manager of people. I'm a manager of tech. That's my power. But he didn't take the time to find out what sweet spot meant to him. So in life, we do that. We're like, oh, this guy wants challenge. Cool, check. He wants integrity. Check. What does integrity mean to you? What does communication mean to you? I dare you all to go out in life and ask people 5 times why what someone means. I dare you. You will find out the most fabulous things about people, and they will also feel cared about. So the motivation of other, and by the way, he just rocked it for the next 4 or 5 months that we were together working, because he got it. He got the getting out of himself and asking. Might have taken that extra minute or two, but then he can actually say to that person, I can give you an opportunity that means something to you. It doesn't mean just something to me. So the motivation of the candidate is a very big aspect. The last thing, and then we'll get into a couple of questions, is you guys ever gotten a feeling about someone in an interview? Been like, oh, I got a great feeling about this person. And there's people in this room that I have a great feeling about because they're my friends, and I have wonderful feelings about them. But people actually hire on feeling, which is awesome, but just, you can't do it. You can't say, we just connected so much and it's perfect. But what did you connect on? How do they describe themselves? So some of my suggestions, and I'll ask you, for instance, we'll talk about open-ended questions, but one of my gives to companies is when you're interviewing a candidate and there's a resume in front of you, slide it to the side, create space, and look at that person after you've interviewed them and say, our company aside, our position aside, what do you want for your life? What does that look like to you? Anything you want, and I swear you will get more stuff out of someone's mouth. You probably won't want, but you'll get it. But if you stand for someone just giving you their journey, they will give it to you. But if you don't ask and you're so worried about healing your pain, it doesn't matter. So the first question I'll ask will be, if it comes up, will be, what's the most important factor to a candidate? And you have a choice. Company culture, benefits and perks, the candidate's motivations and how a company will fulfill those, compensation, or the feeling about you and the company. Okay. Awesome. So I'm really happy you guys didn't say this. Really happy you guys didn't. And then these two. But the funny thing is, when I ask companies how they close people, I swear this is how they do it. Compensation and perks. Like, we got to close them. How are you closing them? I gave them more money. Why? Well, because that's what we do. And I'm like, but this guy actually doesn't care about money. He actually wants 1 extra day off a month. Imagine that. Oh, I didn't know that. I did because I asked. Oh, okay, got it. So, it's like you just ask. You ask, who are you and what do you want in your life? And the guy might be like, listen, I have 8 kids and I need a 15-minute commute. And you're giving this guy an offer when you give him, let's say, an hour each way, and you want that to be retention, it's not going to be retention. And he's not going to be happy. So I totally get this answer, by the way. All of you that actually said company culture, you're 100% right. But company culture is ingrained in the candidate's motivations and how a company will fulfill those. So it's kind of like, again, when you're dating, you're coming to someone else as you. You want them to fulfill something about you. If you are just your culture and they fit and you fit into who they are, that will just happen. So this is truly the right answer. The candidate's motivations and how a company will fulfill those. It's one of those things where you can't force. It's like you can't force dating. You can't force someone to like your culture. You just have to be your culture. So this is true. It's just, it's ingrained in their motivations. They either are or they aren't connected to you. And then I love it. It is the feeling about the company and whatnot. People, I get feelings about companies too and people, but this is definitely not your, I don't know if everyone just did this to stir this up, but I think it's great. But the feeling about you and the company. So it really is all about them. And that's what companies need to really get. And again, Denver, you guys get it more than any place in the nation. I took a year off of work last year, and I took a journey around the US by myself. And this is where I had two places to decide, Bend or Denver. And I chose Denver because of you guys, because of how much you guys actually already get this, and how much you guys stand for other people more than anywhere else in the country. So you guys already get it. Just implementing it all takes a little bit of time. So we'll go to the next question. Kind of like I mentioned, that one question, which is pushing the paper aside and saying, what does your life mean to you? We ask a lot of yes or no questions, which wastes time, right? Do you want this? Yes. Do you want that? And some people might not know how to ask that, but give me open-ended questions that could bring out what someone else is all about, what's important to them. Think about an open-ended question, not a yes or no statement, of what can actually bring it out. And think broad too. I mean, create it. Describe your passion. Perfect. What's your favorite movie and why? But then stop there for a second. Whoever put this up, your movie and why, and then you would go why and why and why and why again. Because I like Tarzan because of this. You probably are not going to get all the details that you want in that question. You just keep digging down. I don't know who did that, but it's not a bad statement, but that one really needs to keep going down in the why. What would it look like if you could live your dream? Awesome. They may answer that. You might be like, whoa, we can't give you that. Like, there's no way. What's your purpose? And that's great. That's a big one, though. What do you like to create? That's a very open-ended question. What motivates you professionally and personally? Perfect. What's your big, hairy, audacious goal in life? Awesome. What gets you up in the AM? Great. What are your goals and how can we help you reach them? It's great. I actually really like that question. It's to the point, yet it's broad enough. What are your goals? You're not saying, what are your goals in engineering, your goals in finance? What are your goals? If money has no problem, what would you do? Perfect. What do you like to create? Describe a time you failed at something. That's a great one because you see how they flip it. What were the last 3 books you read and why? Those are great questions. Exactly. So, and where do you want to be in 5 years? That's always a tricky one for me. I kind of hate that question. No offense. But it's always like, I don't know. Life is fast. Life's fast for me. So asking someone an open-ended question versus closed, you get a lot more information. But if the creation of these questions is literally just standing outside of yourself, or think, what would I want someone else to ask of me? How would I want them to find out about me? So overall, the last part is the most important part of them all. Most organizations will not say no to a candidate that fit their culture and their must-haves and nice-to-haves. I've watched them do it over and over again. Yet I've talked to them about, but you can't give this person the journey they want. What are you doing? Well, because they're perfect for us. Got it. So your culture stands in me, not in me, right? They're like, no, like we're a collective and we're a really connected group. No, you're standing for a singular purpose, not for everyone else. So don't be afraid of looking at a candidate and saying, I just don't think we can give you the path you want, and see what they say. So really getting out of self and into others is really the key factor as well. So I call it creating your we culture, and the book will come out in the next year or so. But it's really about creating your we culture so that everyone is connected. So at the end of the day, what drives them to make their decisions in their lives. So at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is retention. So how many of you guys have followed along and gotten a lot out of the last couple of slides or whatnot? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yay. Goal achieved. So really, now, this is what I've given you today is an hour or so of what I do with organizations over weeks and months, right? But this is your foundation. I swear to you, if you look through this lens every time, at every resume, at every time you connect with your leadership, if you stand for being a leader, Retention starts before they turn over, before you interview them, before you have to gut out a bunch of money to hire me or Dave. You don't have to hire me or Dave to start. You might have to, because you might not have enough time. But if you can hire us, for instance, or you can engage your team within, and you get this already, I'm telling you, you will not make the failures that the companies that I worked for did. And they're better for it. But I just don't want you guys to have to make the same thing. So the goal is retention. The goal is up front. Do it all up front. I call it front loading. Don't be scared to spend the time or the money on it. If you're not an expert, seek out an expert. I seek out experts all the time. I mean, integral performance and whatnot. I seek out there. We're partners, but they coach me all the time. I'm not afraid to do that. You just got to grow. So that's essentially our final aspect. But and then Pascal, I know you'll like this one. I've actually never been to a Tony Robbins session, although I know you have. So this is what I really want to. One thing I want to leave you with is knowledge is not power. Knowing a concept is only potential value. The execution of knowledge is where your power lies. If all I do is sit here and talk to you for an hour and you get it and you're like, wow, that would be really powerful to just go do that, because there is no power in an action. There's no power in just listening to something and not doing anything about it. Growth is uncomfortable, growth is scary, you might find out that you need to spend some money. Okay, but get present with what actually needs to happen in your organizations and decide to do it or decide to not, one or the other. Because I can guarantee you that what I just put you through, if you put yourself through that, it will transform your organization and it will create your foundation. So last one is oh, did we put that up there? I don't know. I don't remember that one. Oh, mine? Oh, okay. Well, okay, no, we communicated last night. I was probably half asleep. So we're not going to do those questions. Oh, got it. So now that we've all sat in the room for a little bit over an hour, and I've jammed at you what I do in weeks and months with employers, and I walk them through this process. So just a few people. And again, I stand for we, which is a connection of us to each other and what we see and what we've gotten out of things. Are there a few people that want to share what they've gotten out of today? Something that they've seen for themselves, something that they could bring back to their organization, something that they've already done and they've gone, yeah, I get it, I'm doing it right. Is there anyone that wants to share briefly? Okay.
I'm actually a recruiter and I work with the salespeople, and the sales managers are on the hook and they're trying to grow the business and there's all this stress.
You stand up.
The ones that say to me, I have a job opening, give me resumes, and I get like really aggressive about send me resumes, and you just help me on how to slow them down, because if I go to the place and I'm like, oh, I know you're stressed, and okay.
Yeah.
So that was really valuable about that's not, no.
Yeah, and that's great that a recruiter actually stood up and identified with that, because it is huge. It helps them do their jobs, and they also can say, do you guys get it? How are we hiring the best people for you? Because recruiters are your partners. They're not most people don't really want to work with recruiters. Anyone else have something else that Pascal?
It was just very clear that it needs to be a mutual fit instead of a one-sided conversation or a one-sided decision. I think it's very easy to think like, this person's great, but are we really the best fit for them too?
Yeah, that's powerful. James?
The power of vulnerability.
Explain that. Stand up and explain that.
The power of vulnerability. Make yourself vulnerable to the candidate and give them space so they can be vulnerable, so you can be vulnerable.
Right. Vulnerability. Got it. So with the areas that I described and kind of this trilogy and this package deal to go through, do you guys feel empowered to take back to your organizations the ability to go in there and just look for yourselves what's there and what's not, and what could enable your organization to hire better? Do you guys see that? Yeah. So again, I mean, literally you're getting a tip of an iceberg and there's so much more to it. There's even search, but that's down the road. I don't even teach search. A lot of people want me to teach search up front, and I don't. I teach them once they've realigned themselves. So I think we have maybe like 15 minutes or so left. 5 to 10, okay. So I'll just kind of open it up to questions. If anyone else has any questions for me. based off of this really quick. Oh, they put them up? Okay. What's the best advice you have for a young leader trying to hire the best developers on the planet in a corporate culture that's a bit old school? Well, I've heard this one before. Like 10 years in a row I've heard this. Okay, so what's the best advice you have for a young leader trying to hire the best developers on the planet in a corporate culture that's a bit old school? Okay, so it sounds like whoever this is part of a hiring team. They are not the leader. That's what it sounds like to me. In a corporate culture that's a bit old school. If you are the leader, change your culture. If you don't want it to be old school, change it. Stand for it. But it sounds like to me, and if the person wants to chime in, they can, it's not even about the best developers at this point. I don't know if you guys see that. It's about the fact that you're trying to hire the best developers in a culture that you don't seem to be aligned with. Does that make sense? So there's a bit of a detachment in this statement, which is the best advice for a young leader, okay, trying to hire the best developers in a corporate culture that's old school. Are you old school, or are your leadership old school? And if your leadership is old school and you're a leader in that, go communicate with them. Go talk to them about that. Because it might be, from my experience, that you're unable to pull those engineers in because the organization is old school. And these young developers don't want old school. So maybe you take it upon yourself and you go talk to leadership about what you've seen, your inability to pull these people to this organization in terms of culture. You go have a culture conversation. So I'm not going to give you advice on where to go search for them because the culture connection isn't there. And this is what always happens. It generally doesn't come back to search. It comes back to there's a disconnect. Does that all make sense to you guys? What happened there? So what resources could you point us to learn about providing a great onboarding experience? Onboarding meaning once they have started. I can talk to whoever that is after, for sure. I can do that for you. I had a feeling that was you. Yes, I can definitely refer you to some aspects as well, but I'll only refer you if you get clear about the other stuff. So what role do employee benefits play in hiring the best people? Great question. Totally get it. Like compensation and benefits are two aspects that employers use as tactics to close. They are benefits. These are called perks and benefits. They do play a role. I would challenge you to ask, where does this play a role? Ask your candidate. When you're going to your next opportunity, what do you want that to look like? Holistically, in your position, in their offerings, what does that look like for you? Most employers say, my benefits are this. This is what I have. And then you have no idea what that person on the other side has to say. You don't know what they really want. You've just shoved down their throat what you have. So benefits do play something, but some people don't care about benefits. You will only know if you ask them. So that to this person, benefits can play a role in hiring someone, but you will only know if you get out of yourself and into other. So does that make sense too? See how it all goes back to that like trilogy? It just always goes back there. What resources do you have for getting me and moving me? What resources do you have for getting of me and moving towards we to other? What resources do you have for getting?
And that's your last question.
What resources do you have for getting off of me, so getting out of me and getting into other? I gotta give a really simple answer. So essentially, well, be very Denver-y, because you guys are, that's really just what you guys are. So if I'm reading it right, what resources do you have for getting off of myself and more towards others is become selfless. And get that the journey is not in me, the journey is in we. Your organization will never thrive in me, ever, because you will only be one person, unless you want a singular person company. If you want to grow your organization, you have to step out of you. Just get out of yourself and see for like, I guess to this person, do you want to be seen? Do you want others to care about you? Because if you do, then turn that mirror and say, I'm going to care about someone else in that journey. Yeah. Got it. Last question I will just say real quick is someone mentioned about organic selling or maybe organic recruiting. Normal for organizations to start. My last organization, Medallia, organically grew from networking and referrals for the first 350 people, and then they couldn't do it anymore. There's just a strategy. I mean, the person can come talk to me after too. There's a way in which to go from tapping into your network, then there's that shift that you start become a larger organization and you need help. But again, no matter how you grow organically or not, you have to take that formula. You have to take that back and interview everyone and through that. But there's just that shift in organization. And that's a bigger question from going from organic growing to actually having to hire resources for that. But I'm happy to answer any of those questions. So that's it. That's all I had to share in the hour and a half that I packed in. Thank you. So I have cards out there. There's a sheet to leave your information. I'm happy to have coffee with any of you, talk to you about anything that you guys might have questions about. I get it, you're not masters at this, neither am I, but we're in mastery. So I'm here for you as you guys have been here for me too. So connect with me, text me, call me. I'm here. Thank you guys for being here and standing for what's better in your organization.